Today we are talking about annual planning. Thank you so much for everybody that's joining. We are recording this session. We are going to share it out so you can feel free to forward. I even have a whole slide full of the resources that we're going to be talking about today. So you'll get lots of links out to other content here. So without further ado, we'll keep it moving. And the next thing up is quick intro. So Jim, thank you so much for joining me today. Why don't you give a quick intro on who you are?
Oh, absolutely. I always love to spend time with the 90 tribe and with the 90 customers. So I'm a coach. I used to be part of 90, but I've taught EOS and many other operating systems. Been doing the entrepreneurial thing for my whole life. Can't seem to stop. It's how do I solve a problem? I start a business. I'm here to represent that process. And I think what you're seeing in your resources, I give out free stuff every year to help people get their great annuals because it's Christine. I just know that it's such an important part of running a great business is getting good at that longer term planning. Even when you think like, oh, I'm too busy, like you're not too busy. But the people here probably know that already. That's why they're here.
Well, that's why I threw your email up here. And then in the list of resources, I've also got a link to Jim's calendar. That's a help first hour around annuals. So if anybody needs it or wants a deeper dive into these topics today.
Yeah, it's a sales-free zone, guys. Don't worry about that. I just want you to be successful. So
awesome. Well, I'm Christine. If you've been to any 90 events, then you probably see me, know my face, my voice. I'm chief of staff here. And I am here to tee Jim up with some great questions, get some good insight, and also take us through 90 software and show you some best practices in there. Awesome. So today, like I said, we're going through facilitation of annuals, making sure that we are staying on objective for the meeting, and making sure you have a plan to review and realign your strategy around your vision, and making sure that you are executing well. And the way that we're doing that today is we're going to be talking about things conceptually. So what is the annual? Why are we doing it? How are we using the tool to more effectively do this? And then what are the disciplines that you're building or working on within your company to actually really get into the weeds and make this happen? Which, Jim, I'm so excited you're here to talk about that because you've seen so many of these in action.
Right. Well, I think I was trying to figure out how many together when I was doing my post on LinkedIn, like between Christine and I, how many meetings have we facilitated in our, It's a lot. It's a lot. It's hundreds. Could it be thousands? I don't know. Maybe it's thousands. Could be.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we kick it off, I think you guys know we love to ask a quick question so that we can help orient things back as we're going through the presentation to what's most helpful for you guys. So we'd love to think about your company's biggest challenges and achieving those long-term goals that you usually talk about at your annual. So Christy, go ahead and throw up our survey here. Is it failure to respond to shifting priorities? Is it a lack of motivation from your team? Misalignment between the company vision and departmental goals? Or are you missing some of those processes and things to reevaluate departmental long-term goals? So if any of these resonate with you, go ahead and check those off. It just helps us orient for the rest of the call.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a, I think everyone on this call probably realizes it, but what an important topic. And people don't understand how critical it is to set aside time, prepare for that time, and execute that time well to make sure that your execution actually happens. I mean, that the execution only happens if everyone's really aligned. And I think we'll plenty of chances to talk about this, Christine. But I do so much research on this concept and how, like even the U.S. military has done a lot to make sure that even when plans break down, which they always do, when you deal with the enemy, it's like when everyone has a plan to get punched in the face, right? So you meet the enemy, or you meet your competition, or you meet market realities. If everyone knows what our intent was, then they can make better decisions all up and down the chain, and that's really it's so important that we know where we're all going together.
Right. And that leadership team being the first critical step of getting on the same page is so important for that.
Yeah. And we'll talk about it, but communication of those things is really the point. And that's what one thing that 90 helps with so much.
Yeah. All right, Chris, you want to close out our poll for us? Let's see I don't know if we got, all right, we've got our highest response at 50% is really those processes to revisit and evaluate the departmental long-term goals. So that's great. We'll talk about that today. Coming up as our runner-up is that lack of motivation and accountability to those long-term goals. So we'll make sure that we hit that especially hard as we're going through. These meetings are to set up and establish what they are.
Yes.
That last aspect of discipline for getting those done, I think, is really critical.
Yeah, and I got some shares about why that happens.
Great.
And the leaders might not like my answer, but it's your job.
Yep.
All
Yep.
right, good.
So 5 stages, this is something that we bring up and we share along the road because we believe every company is going through these inevitable, unavoidable stages of development. And when you're at this lower survival state, maybe you're alone in thinking about things long term. The rest of the team they don't have the capacity or the time to walk through that with you. Maybe resources are a problem. But as you continue to move up, you should really be working in more of these disciplines to align and create and cascade vision down the organization more and more.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an important opportunity to help people mature in
Hmm.
their, participate in the business and to get them to have ownership of things. So, I mean, that's really the point here. Is it's if it's just you having a vision, that's great. But you owning it isn't going to help you achieve it. You need all those people to also be baked into it, and giving them more opportunity to speak to it and take ownership of it. And this will speak to the department level part of this. Is that, hey, this is where we want to go. How do you think we should get there? And being able to let people answer that question, and then mentor them into an answer we can all live with. That is the job of being that visionary leader. And I think that what's one of the things that changes from 1 to 5 here is that the difference between exciting everybody about the vision down at 1 and up to the point where you're using vision creation and alignment and planning to help mature your leaders and have them have ownership. That's really the transition you're making as you're going up the ladder here.
And exactly, yes. And you are building centers of excellence within your organization as you're moving up this ladder. And so as we're going through the rest of the presentation, be thinking about, I'm showing you a default agenda, a default way to do things. Depending on where you are in terms of your maturity, you may have to, I need to edit or adjust this or do things a little bit differently. And it all needs to be, the best thing to do is what's going to be that works for your business. So
yeah, and I'll try to call it out too, Christine, because I think it's this is something that applies mostly here, or this is how it's different from here to there. I think that's, my clients have found this very impactful to understand it this way, that what got us here ain't going to get us next place. So
awesome. Yes. And we know this annual planning process is so important because companies that aren't aligned with strategy do find weaker financial results and getting to those longer outcomes and goals that they've set, right?
It is so, you're not going to perform your goals, and you're going to, if you get to 80%, you're going to be super excited, but you have to get everyone understanding what they are and buying into them and aligning to them and finding their own place in them. And that is the job. That's the job of being a leader in an organization, is to help everybody find themselves there. That's why it works. And it shows up in the money. The money is how we keep score. The financial results is how we keep score, but it's all the other stuff that gets us there. And Jim Collins made that pretty clear for us all to follow suit on that. So it's got good data behind it. We don't have to pretend it's true. We know it's true.
And especially talking about those things that aren't financial results, but those goals and that purpose that you're setting as a vision. Before we get into okay, how is this happening and what is the agenda and how are you going through this process? I'd love for you to talk about this slide, Jim, in terms of how we are thinking about predicting what's going to happen next and the impact that has on the business.
Yeah, I mean, so here's the thing. I'm going to take you I'm going to start with the end in mind. Eventually, everyone in your business is going to have the feeling. This is that alignment, that excitement that you're looking for. That what I do today is actually getting me to this long-term goal we're excited about, right? And that's what this process should give you. But it's about communication and alignment and focus. But when you get to the place where, hey, I know I've told you about this purpose, this place beyond the horizon we're trying to get to. And if you do a good job of communicating that, and then we say, hey, we believe that there's this place out on the horizon, as far out as we could possibly see, roughly 10 years, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 15, somewhere in there. That's, we call that the compelling audacious goal at 90 because we don't know what big hairy means, but it's the big hairy audacious goal. And just, can we make that really clear? Can we give everyone alignment around that? Right? Because what that does for us is that then we have a clear understanding of asking the question, hey, if we're going to get to there at this date certain, to maybe 10 years out, maybe 5 years out, where do we have to be in 3 short years? Where, how can we make sure we're making tracks towards that? And then if we're going to get to that place in 3 years, how do we get to it this year? What do we need to get done this year? And we are bad at predicting much past 90, just because of the shape of human brains. We don't do a good job of this. So you need this structure to be able to frame it up and start asking the right questions. That is the tool of this. Is the concept is we want to be able to have good goals that we can get to and track ourselves towards it. But the discipline of it is asking these questions on a regular basis, once a year. Let's reassert, we think this is where we're going. Does everyone still agree with that? Is that still the right goal? And how do we capture the 3 year? How do we capture the 1 year? And ultimately the quarterly. And then there's actually down to the weekly. Every week, I want everyone in our organization to know that what they're doing is getting me to that quarterly goal, which is what's getting me to that 1 year goal, which is what getting me to those 3 year goals, which ultimately gets me to that BHAG, or that compelling audacious goal, which is the way we measure our path towards our purpose. And that becomes a flywheel of excitement inside my business. That is the flywheel. So when we all feel like we're accomplishing something towards a bigger purpose that I bought into already, then it isn't just about the money, which the money doesn't really help. We all got to get paid, sure. But to build a great business, that's what you have to be driving that flywheel. That is your job as a leader in the organization, is to make sure that flywheel is turning. You can't just invite people to it and hope they get excited about it. Your question is, am I exciting and aligning everyone with my definition of these things?
And that's how you really get that execution on those longer term goals, right? If it's not just financial based and you're pushing towards a mission, a purpose, that bigger picture thing that helps get those leaders and then the leaders below the leaders and everybody on the same page and actually working towards that 10 years out, like that's pretty fuzzy, right? You should explicitly say what you want it to be, but all of those marching steps along the way are going to be helpful to make sure it becomes a reality.
The clearer you can make it, the better of a chance you have of actually getting there. And so if people start asking questions, well, if that's true, then this is going to have to be true. And that's why you hire more and more experts as you get bigger and bigger. It's like, because they can go, well, if that's true, then we have to go build this thing. We have to have this kind of, stuff for our employees. We have to have this many units that we're operating. We have to have this many places that we operate in. And all those things are hard and they're fuzzy, but we want to get better and better at it so we can know where to put our energy. And when we start executing those things, we get to celebrate those wins. Man, you can't buy that kind of excitement. So.
Right. And it's so important every single quarter, making it part of your ritual to celebrate those wins. I love what you said around the flywheel, because we really do think about our year in terms of, all right, 3 times a year, we're going into quarterly planning. 1 time a year, it's special. It's our annual planning. So really thinking about making sure each year is consistent in this way where you have that chance to review and then reset is so important.
Yeah, and put the time into the annual plan, because it's we suggesting for most of those places on the five steps up until 4 and 5, you're not going to spend much more than once a year thinking about these things. When you get to be Amazon size, you've got Jeff Bezos or someone, whoever replaced him, thinking about the future every day. But you got to earn the right for that. Most of us don't have time for that, but once a year, you should set aside the time to prepare and to consider these things and make great plans to get better and better at doing that. So you can then go heads down to the next quarterly, figure out whether we're making progress, heads down to the next quarterly. And that kind of cadence is what's going to drive success.
And I don't know if anybody in the chat has this question too, but I know we hear it on the 90 side a lot of, when do we do these? If it's not March 31st at the end of the first quarter, is that a fail? And so I'd love for you to talk about when people are planning these and physical calendars and all of that stuff. When's the best time to do it?
Yeah. And let me just, so what are the right things to focus on, right? So you don't focus on the timing. That is the wrong place to put your time and energy, because what I want for you and what you should want for yourself is 4 cracks at getting your rocks done, your quarterly plans done. This is how we build and fix things. That's the most important thing. And figure out what you need to know to make good plans there. Because the reason people want to line it up with whatever their financial reporting thing is, so on this date, everything is true and we know everything, but it's not, there's no magic. Hopefully you're getting to the place where you're not going to be surprised on your quarterly results, which should be part of your goal. You shouldn't be surprised by your quarterly results. You should be looking at stuff every week. A good scorecard you look at every week gives you predictability on that. And we just know whether we're making progress or not. And so it doesn't really matter where you sit in the quarter when you're making your plans, because you're looking at what's going on and you're like, hey, we're off in these ways or we're on in these ways. And it's more important to focus on the other parts of this. Are we building the things and accomplishing the things we need to get to that next place? So that's why we have numbers associated with the quarterly and the annuals. Like what's revenue, what's profit, what are the leading indicators that help us understand whether we're making the future. So I've got clients that have, obviously I'm doing sessions all quarter, all the time.
Right.
And some people, early on, they like, oh, I want to make sure we're right on the quarter. It's like, well, you're not going to have all your results anyway. And then why would you be surprised on that day? Why would that be the day we want to do this? So it's more important to just consistently get together, what happened last quarter, what needs to happen next quarter, and then at the annual, what needs to happen the next year. Make that consistent. 90 days, 90 days, 90 days. Keep going, because that's what's going to really move you forward. That's what matters. And what matters is running that meeting well and preparing for it appropriately. That's what matters. The day that it happens will not affect your outcomes anywhere near as much as those two things. Running a great meeting, preparing for it well.
Yeah. And I'll speak from specifically at 90 experience. Yep. Over the last 7-8 years. There's been some quarters where it lines up perfectly and we have actuals to compare to our goals and it's awesome. And then there's other quarters where the most important thing is just the conversation that's happening. We can see our last 13 weeks of data, and the important thing is we're talking about how that trend line is going. And so if we don't have the actual end of quarter perfect reporting numbers, it's not going to make or break us having a good conversation.
When your team is running well, you know enough about what's working and what's not working that you don't need those specific dollars and cents numbers for the end of the quarter. You're making reasonably good predictions, and at that point, and you know where the problems are.
So don't let perfection stop your progress. Right. And that takes me to our zoomed in view. So if we go back, we've got our every single quarter things are happening. Mm-hmm. If I zoom in on our annual planning segment of this is usually what we look at as the cadence that's happening once a year. It's very similar to your departmental, but there's 4 main things that are happening, 4 main meetings, and you should kick it all off with really good intentional prep work that you're doing and really thinking about the upcoming annual with your leadership team, annual with your department, state of the company, and your quarterly discussions that are hopefully happening.
And so we'll dig into what prep work means. And I've got a long list of prep work that I give to some of my clients, and then I make smaller subsets of that for other clients. But there's real work to be done here. So you come in and those moments you're free to really think about the future. And you have all the right understanding into it. When we go into the agenda, it'll start bringing out some of those things that have to happen.
Yeah, and I jotted down a few ideas here, and I think your point is absolutely correct, where this is, again, really dependent on the company and maybe even like the stage or maturity that you're thinking about. But ideally, everybody's completing a 9 core competencies assessment so that you are looking at, okay, let's evaluate how the business is doing as a whole. You're thinking about your rocks upcoming. You're thinking about your 1-year and your 3-year goals. So go through your vision and really refresh yourself. What did we commit to last year? Let me relook at this and see how we did and what I think we could do. And you're reviewing the long-term issues. If you are a facilitator, you might want to be thinking about what's upcoming for your team health and exercises there. So we can dive a little bit more into what that means too.
Yeah. If you're hopefully you're working with someone who can facilitate you, a coach or USI or someone like that, because especially the annual is the one, even if you're graduated, you've got this mostly down, do yourself a favor of not having to facilitate and participate in this meeting, because there's a lot that needs to go on, and having a professional facilitator makes a big difference. So that's one of the things I do with people all the time is let's find you a facilitator that works for you on your budget and what your needs are right now.
Yeah. And I think another thing that I really loved about our discussion before this call, Jim, was looking at these arrows that are happening.
Yeah.
And it is so important to kick off this process, but not, again, get hung up in the perfection of it. If you're running your
Right.
leadership team manual and you're having quarterly discussions before your departmental planning, like it's all good. These things just have to happen, right?
Yeah, because here's the thing. So it's not just executing these things; it's the communications opportunities they present. I mean, what you're doing at the leadership team level is making decisions and then talking about how you want to communicate them. What's the best way for us to roll this out? What's the best way to give everyone a chance to take ownership, but also get them aligned to what we're thinking? And so, is it the state of the company that happens next, or is it department planning that happens next? There's no perfect one way of doing it, but you should decide exactly how you want to approach it. And as we go through the rest of the agenda, we should talk about what are the types of things we want to communicate. But know that that's really the primary driver here is getting everybody aligned. You could be right and still lose. That's what they say at Wharton all the time. And one of the ways you lose is by not getting everybody on board. And getting everyone on board by making sure you're having all of these conversations and there's no surprises through this process, and everyone has a chance to give feedback and participate and take ownership.
Yeah, and I love that 7 times rule concept
Yes,
where you've
right.
made these decisions at the leadership team annual, and all of these things, all of these meetings are opportunities for you to talk one-on-one about it, for you to talk with sub teams about it, with you to talk about the whole company.
Yeah.
More ways to iterate that same message so that things can actually be understood, questions can be asked, and that can actually manifest into reality.
Yeah, 7 times rule. This is really comes from a pedagogical model. People aren't going to hear the first time. Plan on as your communications plan on reminding people and spend the time, hey, here's our goal, give it a name that everyone can really resonate with so that everyone understands it and they can then build their decision making around it. And then that's what really matters is like, hey, everyone really gets it and they know how to use it. So yeah, good call out.
Awesome. Well, I'll keep us moving. I would love for us to go through the breakdown of the meetings that are going to happen. So we're going to pull up and we're going to show you the agendas for day 1 and day 2 of our leadership team annual. We'll talk about the departmental. Before we dive into that, high level zoomed out objectives.
Mhm.
What are we trying to do and accomplish with our 2 days at the leadership team annual planning?
Yeah, and this really goes back to our that long road that we're on is
Mhm.
that um where we need to do some work to make sure we really understand the business, our progress to this point, where we sit in the market, and then get aligned ourselves so that we can then distribute it to everybody else on what is most important. That's because there's nothing more important. The alignment and buy-in is what you're going to try to create out of this on your team and then the rest of the teams as well. Um, and we just know that there's some, there's some proven things that we know have to happen to make that when to get to that. But making sure that we've created a plan for the next year that everyone can really get excited about and be focused on.
Mhm. And we've got our agenda here. So I've segmented this into a few parts. So with day 1, you can see everything on the right, but with your objectives and your check-in, you're really trying to like get the ball rolling, get people talking, start those conversations around what have you accomplished, both personally and professionally. And so you're sharing, you're having those trust building moments, and then you're going into really like, okay, let's talk about that review of the prior year and prior quarter. Tell us a little bit about what happens during those conversations with teams that you've coached.
Yeah. What's really important here is that we had goals. We were going to make some of our goals. We're not going to make all of them, more than likely. And we have to talk about what we want to learn from this is what happened from poor execution, and what happened from we couldn't have planned for this, and what can we take from that. So, I mean, right in this first section, we're trying to really understand the prior year and what that teaches about ourselves, about our team, about our company. And that's what we're really trying to do is scrape through all of those issues that really come out of our, the history. History doesn't necessarily become the predictor of the future, but it more than likely has some insight in it. And getting everyone on the same page what those insights are is really where we start. And quite often people, weak teams will blame or will deflect. Strong teams will really have great conversations here, and that's what you're really looking for. And if you're working with a facilitator, that will help you find is, we don't want to spend a lot of time here. We're really talking about a relatively quick part of our meeting, but it's important to go through it and own it and make sure there's nothing else to unpack. And we're just making issues. We're just scraping through issues here.
Right.
And a good facilitator will go, okay, that's a thorny thing. We're gonna have to deal with that later. Because we want to make sure that there's nothing that's going to keep us from together aligning on the future. And that's what we're really looking for here. And then you want to put it aside. We've got no chance of impacting that. We want to move on to making great plans. And so this puts us in the right, frame of mind of this is where we really are, my friends. It's the difficult truth of where we are.
Yeah, I think that's such an important concept to make sure that you're framing things up of we're not playing the blame game here. We want to review, we want to learn from what we did and take it and move forward. I know a ritual that we go through at 90, I'll actually pull up the scorecard and show you an example here. But we go through and we talk about, did we win or did we learn this quarter, right?
Yep.
And that's such a helpful discussion. And we have like a quick yes or no that we select in the scorecard. So if you want to have a yes or no metric, you can do that within here. And you can add a note. And so we add anywhere between 3 and 5 talking points where it's like, hey, this is what we want to bring up at our departmental quarterlies when we talk about how we think we did. And then we're also going to talk about it at state of the company. So everybody can just get a line. Here's the things we did really well. Here's the things that we think we learned. We're taking this and it's all about that forward progress.
Once again, this is really about the communication opportunity. What do we understand? Because everyone lived there, right? Everyone went through it. Mm-hmm. If we tell them the wrong thing, then that's going to feel false. So we want to make sure we're being open and clear and give everyone a chance to also put away the last year. Whether we won or whether we lost, it doesn't really matter. But are we all in the same place right now? And in starting that conversation inside the leadership team and making sure that we understand how we're going to talk to everyone else, but how do we have a shared understanding of it?
Absolutely. And you get a very fun
I love this
new
scorecard, by the way.
Yes. If you guys haven't gotten it yet, it is coming out. It's, I think, next week where you can actually have groups of content here. A lot easier filtering. If you're the kind of person that wants to reframe how you view this, if it's forwards or backwards, that's a lot easier to do here too. So,
oh, that's great.
Very exciting stuff.
Yeah. And you can see, this is having quarterly metrics you're going to look at, and then annual metrics you're going to look at. This is an important part of that. This is how we turn expectations into agreements. Is you've got, ways of measuring, and there's both. Hey, we didn't make this one. We haven't made it in a long time. Is that really the right measurable? Or is it the right goal? What can we do about that? And it's read all the time. It doesn't really help anybody. It's not here to demotivate people or to, punish people. It's here to let's better understand what's really going on here and have a shared understanding.
Yep, absolutely. What's actually going to help us identify when there's an issue or not just some aspirational number. Yeah. Well, like you said, this is a very quick portion of the meeting. So I think important for everyone to reset on here's what we think, here's what we want to communicate out. You can document that in the system. The next portion is really about knowing your team, knowing your company. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen work really well and why it's important to actually spend the time and not just skip the team health exercise.
Well, here's the thing. We have to, when I think about this section, how I describe it to people is you want to make sure you have self-awareness, that you have team self-awareness, that you have company self-awareness, and that you have awareness for the company inside your market. That's what these 3 sections here are. And the team health one, there's just a new Harvard Business Review article that came out today. I got my I still get the paper copy, Christine.
Yeah.
I'm old school. But it's talking about the fact we still feel lonely inside our businesses, and the engagement and alignment happen. It's real work. And what we know is that high trust companies are the ones that are most likely to succeed. And there's no way of getting to high trust unless you spend time understanding each other at a deeper level, expanding. We use the Johari window model for, I know what I know about myself and you know about me, what I know about myself, but you don't know. So I need to push that open a little bit more so I can reveal more about myself so you understand my motivations, and whether that's stories we tell about each other, or some of the ways we profile each other, like, Colby and predictive
Mhm.
index and culture index. Those are all great ways of starting a conversation. So we really can get to that place where we're sharing at that really healthy way. We've got healthy conflict because we know and understand each other. And, we've got all the visions in the world to know that if we do that kind of work, we can do much better work together. So it should not be left alone. And the most important one is probably the one thing, because that way it resonates throughout the year. Right?
Right.
But coming up with that thing that we can, that we're going to work on for you as part of the team for the year, and coming up with a way of how we're going to manage that and making that commitment to each other. That's actually probably the most powerful one. And I know I've seen your list. I've got a list too exercises. Some of them aren't likely to cause crying.
Yeah.
Some of them are a little less like that. And I have different ones I present to different clients based on where I think they are, and that, are they ready? Like I've done that version of the math of trust a couple of times, but I don't do that with early teams because that's too heavy for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I knew I was going to get this question,
Yeah.
Michelle, of getting a list of the team health activities. I actually do have a presentation that is in our resources at the end. So you'll get a whole link to that. And the really interesting thing is Jim's talking about a range, right? So we think about these, if you're thinking about a scale of
Yep.
1 to 10, there's a certain level of risk or vulnerability that you're giving as a person through these exercises. So a 1 or a 2 is going to be personal histories. There's 5 questions about your background, right? And it's super light and high level. You can go all the way to maybe like a 7 or 8. You're probably not going to go beyond a 8 with people you work with, but the one
Right.
thing exercise where,
Yeah.
hey, go around the room and share what's one thing we love about you. What's one thing where you could really work on this throughout the next year. And it's an opportunity to take things down deeper to the next level. But like Jim said, depending on who the company is or who the team, you're going to choose something different. So we'll definitely get you a list of all of
Yeah.
those for you guys to take home with
Yeah.
you.
There's plenty of them out there, but it's there's but yeah, the Christine's list is good. I've seen it. It's a good one.
I added yours onto mine too.
Oh,
So
good.
I'm creating a master. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, that's a good resource for the world for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
So that's team health. You want to take 90 minutes there. 9CC review, that stands for 9 core competencies. And this is
Yep.
that hopefully you did it during prep work. You can actually do it through the 90 platform. You guys have access to assessments here. And so if you go ahead and set up an assessment that's in here, our admin area, you'll have access to, maybe yours says org fit review, maybe it says 9CC. This is just the chance to go through and see, all right, how are we doing on these 9 core competencies of the business? If you have the EOS template, I think it's called org fitness review too. I really should have known that coming into
That's
this.
but it is in there. You can take the test. It is the official test, right?
Yes, yeah. So it's our version of, all right, let's look at the key components of the business or the core competencies and give you some feedback back on, hey, maybe you want to focus on process a little bit more next quarter. Maybe you need to dive into data. So it just brings some of that stuff higher level. Again, just generating more conversation and hopefully adding some issues to the list, just like SWAT would do.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll say about that, I like the 90 version of this because it's about that spider graph and understanding that that's supposed to be a circle, and it's better that it's a smaller circle than it's a larger jagged thing, because it's really
Mhm.
like riding a bicycle. You don't want the bumpiness because you can't take advantage of being super good at data if you're really bad at culture or something like that. So, it should be input into things you might work on over the year. How are we going to get this? How are we going to strengthen this part of our business? Because there are different models for different operating systems, but they're all pretty valid. They're all like, hey, these are a way of breaking down this whole thing of running a great company into individual disciplines that we have to develop. And that's part of that. Okay, team health was about, hey, this is about me. This is about our team working together. This is about our company and how healthy the company is. And that's got to be part of the input for our planning.
Yeah. And it's a big part of the day, but it's really important. So day 1, you're doing a lot of that reflection, team, trust. The final 2 hours of the day, you're finally getting into some of that vision and goal setting. So I'd love for you to talk about these last 2 hours and how people should really be thinking about and taking their teams through this.
Yeah. So if those first 7 things are all giving us the context to start making great plans. If people say, I'd like to, I just want to get into the planning, but you can't make those plans unless you have all these other things in hand, all these other things in mind. And it, teasing those things out. What was true about our past? What's true about the health of the company and the team and of where we sit in our marketplace? With all that understanding, now we should go back through and make sure that our vision and our focus filters still make sense, still rationalized against these ways. We have common questions we ask about how to rationalize them. Are these still our core values? Are they written in the language of the company? Are we doing everything we can to hire, fire, review, reward, and recognize people against these core values?
Right.
And spend that time thinking about it. And then every part of your vision should be, hey, is there something that needs some work here? You're not going to solve it in that hour, but you're going to tease those things out and decide how important it is and where it sits in your world. And that's important to know, because that stuff will then have impact on, going back to our road diagram. If we're not clear on those things, if we're not really solid on that, then it's really hard to make the 3-year plans, our 3-year goals, as effective as they could be. So, in 3-year goals, what's interesting here, we don't measure our effectiveness on our 3-year goals. We don't grade ourselves on our 3-year goals. Our 3-year goals are going to be wrong, more wrong than our 1-year goals, but we should get better and better at being really accurate with our 1-year goals. But at 3-year goals, I'm just trying to create as complete a picture as I possibly can of what will this look like if I'm succeeding, if I'm doing what I need to accomplish. Because everyone in the room there should participate in that, should be able to add to that, and take some ownership of some piece of that. How many people do we need? What kinds of people? One of my favorite things that we've done recently is as we're reviewing 3-year goals, we're actually going and creating that 3-year from now responsibility chart or accountability chart, and actually let's start making it real, man. Because that's an important part of who we are. It's an important part of our goals. So, hey, we know we're going to have some people that we're adding to where are they going to be? What's our, and then and there's usually some work that has to be done with that. So we're going to assign that to someone to go figure those things out. But that's part of that review of the what we've got. We need to have that clear, because if we don't have our 3-year goals clear, we're not going to be able to have clear 1-year goals. And that's really the point. How much of a clear picture of the future can we make so that we know what is most urgent and important this year to go solve?
Right, right. And if anybody wants me to show you how you can go in and create multiple versions of your org chart, let me know. That function is in there, so you can have multiple draft versions that you're choosing who to share with.
And you can decide who sees them and all that kind of stuff. But it's really
Absolutely.
a great a sandbox for thinking about that stuff. And a lot of my clients really appreciate that, because it's really an important part. There we go. So drafts. Yep.
So you come over into drafts. It's right next to your primary chart, and you can create a new one from scratch. But what I really love to do is come in here and just duplicate my current version as a draft. And that gives me a much better view. You'll see now it's under my chart, so I can create as many versions of this as I want to. And then when I open it up, now I can come in here. I'm editing my own specific version. I can rename it if I want to name it 3-year version, and then choose who I'm sharing the chart with. So lots of flexibility within here.
Yeah, I mean, all my clients, we put the future year on it, so we know that we created on this date for 3 years out. So we start getting better and better at making those predictions.
Yeah. And I'm asking this because we get the question a lot, so I'm not sure if it would come up in chat later, and I'm just getting ahead of it. But we're not at 3 years yet when we come into this meeting sometimes. Do I update these goals? Do I update these numbers with something that's more true, or do I leave it because I set these goals last year?
There's no perfect answer. I mean, but it's really about creating as clear a picture of a future. Because I've got some clients who will say, you know what, 3 years is too far. I need 2 years. So that's fine.
Right.
We can do 2 years. It's editable. We can edit what it says. Or we're bold. We think we can edit, 5 years out makes sense. So the purpose of this section of the planning section is to give you that as clear as you possibly can, a future part of, description of your business, revenue, profit, KPIs? What are the most important, things? And then what do those things look like? That's why I ask the question. The question is, what does it look like? Right.
Right.
And so, and we want to start to make it as clear as possible. What are the types of processes we have to have in place? How many products are we going to have? And really start to, well, what we find all the time is that we're not aligned on these things. Stronger teams will say, you know what? I know that's been on there for a while, but I don't get that. Why are we doing that? And that's what you want to capture in here. One of the things I love about this is every one of those items in the 3-year goals has a description section and a place you can make attachments. And what we want to do is make sure someone owns that and brings in new information on a regular basis to make sure that we're moving towards it. Every time we touch it, we enhance it with a little bit more understanding of what's really going to happen. Like, if we're saying, hey, we think we're going to have, we'll have to be in 3 more cities or whatever. Like, okay,
Right.
what are the cities we might consider? Let's just really quickly just jot some of them down. And, we don't have alignment on that. Okay, great. Let's make sure that's one of our topics we're going to talk about. Because we know we have to expand into more cities, but we don't know which ones, and we don't have agreement on which types of cities there are. So using it as an opportunity to understand where I have alignment and I don't. If I don't ask myself enough questions, I'm not going to get to that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great point. Tease out what doesn't make sense or where the alignment isn't. And then that'll help you as you're going into day 2, where this is really all about going to review what you did and the progress you made on 3-year and on vision from day 1. Then you're diving into what are the topics that we need to talk about so that the rest of the day we're getting into setting more goals for our 1 year, setting our goals for our 90 days, and then actually working through some issues, right?
Yeah, I mean, I will to close out on day 1. I'll make one more statement, Christine, is that if you don't have some healthy conflict in these in 8 and 9 here, then you probably have some issues on your leadership team as far as team health. And that's why we do the team health first, because I want to get you in the best possible place of understanding each other as people and having the most respect and most trust. Because now you need to get into the real stuff, and I need your whole self present to answer these questions, to talk about it. So, and this can be an exhausting day. You've been through many times, and we typically go away and spend some time together, but it could be an exhausting because it's a very emotional day. It's really it's a lot of in your heart more than your head when you're doing a lot of this work.
Yeah, and that's one thing I did not have a specific slide around, but I know you've talked about it so many times of, okay, great. If you don't have a professional coach or facilitator in the room, there has to be a person whose job it is thinking about it there on your team, because managing and maintaining the energy of these 2 days is a critical job, right? So why don't you talk us through what breaks or lunch or things like that look like that are just like those little logistics that make a big impact?
Yeah. So here's, as a general rule, we talk about, hey, let's check in on the energy in the room every 45 minutes or so. That's it used to be an hour, but now it's on 45 minutes because our attention spans have shrunk. Because what you want to make sure, and what I tell my clients that are in the room is that I need you to help me make sure the energy is great in the room. So participate in that by anytime you find your attention wandering. And for any reason, let's take a break. It isn't just if I got to go to the bathroom. It's if I can't be fully present, if I can't be participating at the way I want to participate. Because this is part of getting to the end of this meeting and having a level 10, having a 10 out of 10 on the meeting is I fully participated. I fully engaged the entire time. And if you let stuff just go by, that's what happens. You get tired. It's like, I don't have the energy to ask that question right now. We can't do that. So I'm looking for people looking away, or I'm looking for those times when people grimace a little bit, because I've seen this in negotiation conversations where 85% of what goes on is actually the physical presence of people. So watching what they're doing tells me whether they're really engaged or not, whether they have something they want to say. And so it's great to have a facilitator. I say, hey, Christine, do you have anything to say about that? I don't have to tell you that you gave me the tell that you have an opinion, but I'm going to try to draw it out of you. Make sure that everyone had a chance to participate. Everyone had a chance to have their voice heard on these topics. And you can decide, are we going to have a working lunch, or are we going to take a real break for lunch? Are we going to, we always keep lots of food in the room, right? So nobody, and that's part of that cornucopia process where no one here should be at the bottom of the hierarchy of needs. I don't know whether I'm going to have enough to eat or drink. So no, we're going to be safe. I want to make sure you're fine on your physiological needs. You're going to be warm. You're not going to be cold. You're going to be okay. You got some
Yeah.
safety, because I want to get you at the top of that. So you're thinking about self-actualization for yourself and for the team and for the company. So and that's a lot to carry around if you're just doing it yourself.
Right. Yeah, I love that you brought up food. That's one thing that myself and our EA always go back and forth on before sessions. You forget that like all of those little things add up and are so important. And one thing that our chief revenue officer, Chris Snyder, always says at that first 5-minute objectives area is own your experience. And it's a call to action to everybody in the room to do exactly what you just said, Jim, of hey, identify if I am not being my best self. I need a 10-minute break. I just got a phone call and I'm not going to be checked in because I'm wondering what it was about. Like, can we take a break? And so I think that concept of own your experience is a great thing to communicate up front.
Absolutely. It's our collective job to make this a great meeting. And,
Mm-hmm.
someone might be in charge of planning it and pulling all this stuff together. But once we're all in the room, it's all of us together as a team, making this a great experience, and owning your experience is part of that job. So, yeah, that's a great one.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad we spent a lot of time on day one because I think this is what's really unique to the annual meeting, right?
That's right. That's right.
Once you get into day two, this is very similar to the work that you're going to do quarterly, right? So you're doing a
Absolutely.
recap of your 3-year goals, but then you're diving into our key topics and then you're getting into goal setting.
Yeah, I mean, and the point of coming at doing the recap is I want everyone bought in. As a facilitator, that's what I'm looking for. Do I really have buy-in? I might have some questions from the day before. Did we just gloss over this, or we really bought in? And then before we go on into key topics, or there are things that came out of that 3-year planning that are going to become key topics. Like, hey, I have this idea about these 3 cities we need to move in. This guy thinks these 3 cities. That's a topic. Let's make it something we if there's going to be something executable in this year, then gosh, we should probably get some alignment on that. But the teasing that stuff out as opposed to trying to solve it all as we're putting it together is key. And key topics, man. I know this is a 90 innovation in these things. It's a great one because
It is.
people stepping into the planning, the more the operational and tactical planning before they've really made sure that we don't have anything hanging out there that we need to get alignment on. Every company that I've added to their agenda takes advantage of it and really solves some problems and feels amazing about it. Like, hey, I didn't want us to keep going forward, because what happens is that whoever the inspirational leader is can really roll over people without acknowledging it. Right?
Right.
It's hard to know how much you're just doing that and giving everyone a chance to really air it out. All opinions on the table. Shared understanding of it is invaluable.
Yeah, and like you said, key topics is something that we added after we went through maybe 1 or 2 quarters of saying, "Oh, I wish we talked about this at the beginning of the day," because it was a big meaty thing where the decision or the discussion had to happen before we went to rocks or setting any of those goals because we weren't on the same page yet. And so I think that's just a good call out of anytime you feel like we don't have alignment yet, and this is a big impact to a lot of different things that are going to be happening, key topic it.
Yeah, and one of the things we'd like to do as facilitators make sure we know what the end game on this. So we typically any of your key topics, and how I handle is I make in annuals I make 5s key topics. So if you're rating your issues, I make them 5s, and looking at the number, we'll time box them. We'll still sort them at the most urgent, important, and there's some things we're just not going to solve in that time, but making that part of what we have to solve if it's going to be a 1-year plan or if it's going to be a quarterly plan. Like, part of your thing is to present your findings and pitch it back to the team to get alignment from the team. Those are some of your milestones in this, because there's often more research to be done, more understanding to be gathered, but the truth is out there. You got to move forward to get there. We can't sit in the room and just know.
So once you get to that point, you're getting into set those 1-year goals. You're going to have 5, maybe 7, right? Don't make it too many. You're setting up your rocks like you would do in any given quarterly. You're getting into your long-term issue solving. So you're solving any of those issues that you need to chat about.
Yep.
So I'm going to breeze through that because I want to cover in our last 5 minutes the departmental side of this.
Oh yeah.
So I think state of the company, I think quarterly discussions, all of those are separate whole hour-long sessions you could do on each, and we have.
Yes.
But the departmental alignment here, talk to us a little bit about what the agenda or what your considerations are when you're thinking about what to do for those departmental meetings that end up happening after the
Sure.
leadership.
Well, the most important thing is that the way you broke down the agenda, I thought was really smart and on point. Is that you need to have each of those sections represented whenever you do an annual session at any level, right? The concept of putting away the past, doing some team health, and an understanding of where you sit in the universe, having those longer term goals that are that kind of align to everything else. So, I mean, all those sections need to exist. It is difficult to be too prescriptive about what you should do for any one department team, because for lots of reasons, but mostly because they're all going to have different needs for that balance between vision and execution. I mean, that's really the key at the department level. Is at the leadership team level, we want to be really thinking about, I'm working completely on the business, not in the business. And as we move down in the department level, that balance shifts a bit, where all of my planning is a balance between on the business and in the business. Like at weekly meetings, I say, there's a section here for where you're going to go look at some application. I think your sales, I'm going to go look at the CRM. I have a weekly report. That's just the reality of it. I'm gonna do that work as part of my weekly meeting to tease out all my issues. It's not going to be long. You're not going to invest 2 days in it, because hopefully you're not dealing with as big issues, as biggest set of issues. But what you're doing with part of those sections is reviewing what the leadership team says. Leadership team said these are the most important things. And more than likely, you've got someone from leadership team who represents that stuff in the meeting, can add more nuance to it. But cover all those sections, put it away, some team health and understanding where you sit in the universe, 3-year and 1-year planning sections. It's all those things still apply, but with different time frames, and but with the same thought of, I need to keep advancing my people, be a leader, building leaders, and giving people opportunity to buy in, to influence where we're headed, and take ownership.
Yeah, and I think that team health and trust aspect to pull through really helps culture-wise, and helps have those productive discussions. And so when you're aligning the department to those 1-year or the 3-year goals that you set at the leadership team level, then you can even create your own vision off of those, right? So at 90, each team, each department has its own vision, goals page, that second page where we've set our own 1-year ones for that department. It's not something we've always had. Again, you're kind of building towards that maturity wise. But if you're thinking about this kind of as a tree down, right, you have that SLT 1-year goal. And then there's things that are probably happening across each of your different departments to make that thing happen. So if you want to think about rocks or your 1-year goals that roll up in that way, this is a great time to have that dedicated time in the meeting to have these conversations, right, to get more granular as you go down.
And that's part of that balance between things that do roll up and things that are really about us becoming the department we need to be for the future of the company. And you're going to have both those kinds of things in that 1-year plan, in those quarterly plans as well. And I even have some clients that actually create their own departmental purpose, right? So they really have to make sure that, like, everyone knows what our intention is. We go at things with this approach, and we have these principles that we hold to, that are really specific to where we are. So all the things that work at the company wide level, as you get to be bigger and bigger, I've got some clients that are very, very big, very, very large,
right?
And I've got insight into companies I've worked with that are huge, where all these things can apply to the department level or to the division level, right?
Well, you're so right. When I was leading client success here, I had a departmental charter for us so that anybody that came in knew these were our core competencies that we are serving to the rest of the organization, to our clients, and what our mindset was around really doing that. And so Yeah, I think having something like that in here, I popped over into 90 to show you you can have each of your teams with its own vision set up. And then you're deciding from a vision and a goals page if you want all of those to cascade down or not. So
Right.
I would say check this out, chat with your CSM if you want to learn more about how to set this up and configure it in a way that makes sense for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the because know that not one of the things that 90 does is so effective is this is the communications platform for making this stuff really, present for everybody at all the times where they have to make decisions,
Right.
right? And so knowing that that's part of what you're doing, it isn't just about getting it right. It's getting it right as a communication source for everybody else to feel like they are enabled to make decisions that align with where we're headed. Um, and because that's where people fail. That's where it all breaks down.
Yeah. And I think I'm loving that. One, we ended right on time. Like I said, you guys are going to get a copy of this, and I'm going
Yeah.
to send you all of these resources, team health examples. If you want to learn more about 5 stages of development, we actually are running a separate webinar on that we'll link to. 9 core competencies assessment. There was a question about that. And so you can go learn about when are you doing these assessments, what's entailed in it, what
Yeah.
can you learn from it within your organization, along with callback to Jim's got some resources out there, more videos on annual planning. If you want to help first hour with him, go there. And
Yeah.
Christy, I would love for you to share our quick survey. Let us know, was this helpful? What would you like to see future content wise? Any sort of feedback, really helpful for us moving forward. And while you guys are filling that out, we got one question that I will quickly jump to in the Q&A, which was, why does state of the company happen after the departmental planning? And another
Yeah.
call out, just get started with that leadership team planning. Everything after that doesn't have to be
That's
sequential.
right. Yeah, I mean, so what you'll probably find is that you're going to do your senior leadership team stuff. Everyone's going to have a chance to clean up their rocks and work on their communications. You might get some department quarterlies happening before you can get around to a state of the company. What you don't want to do is wait. So
Right.
I don't know where you are at 90 now, Christine, but I know some of my clients that are larger. It can take weeks to get all the quarterly meetings in, and
Yeah.
so just knowing that once again, you're not going to surprise anybody with what happens at the state of the company. It's going to be just part of that communications process of getting everyone together and reassert. The state of the company has a very strict set of goals to it. It is mostly about communication and alignment. Where it sits against all these other things is up to you to make great decisions. So
Yeah. Our goal is typically to have all of this happen within 3 weeks, with the leadership team planning being the first one. If you can do that, great. If you've got a different agreement internally, I feel like it's just like you said, talk about it and see what makes sense based on all of the moving parts within the organization.
yeah.
Um, so I hope that helps. I know we are at time. Thank you so much for filling out the survey. If you did, Jim, thank you so much for coming. Always a
Oh,
good
my
time.
pleasure. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks everybody, and don't hesitate to reach out. Love to help you. Just have an amazing annual planning set of sessions, and hey man, let's crush 2025.
Awesome. Love it.
All right,
Thanks, guys. See you later.
everyone.